I want to start by asking you a question, not a hard one, but an honest one. Who are you when no one's watching? That version of you is the one that determines your future. We live in a world where we spend more time fixing our phones than we do fixing our minds, where we work harder to polish our social media than we do to grow our character. And the problem with that is simple. What you don't fix will eventually break you. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who was always praised for his work ethic. He was first in the office, last to leave. Everyone admired him. But inside, he was empty. He ignored his health, he neglected his relationships, and he numbed his feelings with distractions, work, food. Scrolling endlessly, he didn't think it mattered until it did. One day, he broke. A panic attack at his desk. A total collapse in front of people who had always seen him as strong. You see, you can only run from your inner work for so long. Eventually, life will force you to slow down, or it will shut you down. We all carry wounds, traumas, fears, insecurities. That's normal. What's not normal is pretending those things don't affect us. You don't get bonus points for ignoring your pain. You don't become more successful by pretending you're okay. In fact, you become a ticking time bomb. We often think of self-destruction as something dramatic, a complete breakdown, an explosion of emotions, or a life spiraling out of control. But in truth, one of the most dangerous things we can do to ourselves is far quieter. It doesn't shout. It doesn't make a scene. It doesn't even show up in ways that others can always see. It's silent, it's subtle, and it's called self-neglect. Self-neglect isn't always skipping meals or sleeping too little, though it can look like that. Sometimes it's staying in environments that drain us. Sometimes it's staying silent when we're hurting because we don't want to bother anyone. Sometimes it's burying our real emotions under a smile because facing the truth would take more energy than we have. It's saying I'm fine when we're not, because we've trained ourselves to believe that our needs are inconvenient. What makes self-neglect so destructive is its ability to become normal. It doesn't happen all at once. It's death by 1,000 compromises. You stop exercising because you're busy, and then you stop journaling because you're tired, and then you stop checking in with yourself because there's too much noise. And before you know it, you've abandoned the very things that once kept you grounded, healthy, and clear-minded. This is how people end up feeling empty despite having full lives. This is how burnout creeps in while you're still functioning. On the surface, everything seems fine. You show up to work, you meet deadlines, you even smile in photos. But inside, you're drained. You're disconnected from yourself. Your confidence starts to erode because deep down, you know you're not living in alignment with your values, your needs, or your purpose. The tragedy is that the world will often reward you for this neglect. You'll be praised for your hustle. You'll be admired for your toughness. No one claps when you take a nap. No one gives you a trophy for saying, I need a break. But here's the truth. Constantly sacrificing your well-being to meet expectations, whether external or self-imposed, isn't noble, it's dangerous. The longer you ignore yourself, the louder the consequences get. Maybe it shows up as anxiety that won't go away. Maybe it shows up as anger that erupts at the smallest things. Maybe it's a complete sense of disconnection from your life. Your body and mind start to scream what your heart has been whispering for years. Please take care of me. Fixing self-neglect isn't about being selfish. It's about being responsible. Your presence. And you can't be fully present for others when you're constantly abandoning yourself. Healing begins when you decide that you matter enough to be cared for, not by someone else, but by you. When you learn to check in with yourself the way you check your phone. When you build the courage to rest, the discipline to say no, and the honesty to admit when you're not okay. You are the foundation of everything you build. And if the foundation is neglected long enough, even the most beautiful structures will collapse. So ask yourself, not in judgment, but in compassion, what have you been avoiding? What have you been pretending is not a big deal? What needs your attention before it turns into regret? Because self-neglect might be silent, but its impact, it echoes through every area of your life. And you deserve better than that. There are parts of ourselves we know need attention. Old wounds we've buried, habits we keep justifying, patterns we silently repeat, even though we know they're holding us back. And yet, we often avoid doing the work to face them. We distract ourselves, stay busy, or tell ourselves we'll deal with it later. But what we don't realize, what we often forget, is that what you don't fix in yourself will eventually break you. There's no such thing as unresolved pain that simply disappears. There's no such thing as a bad habit that stays harmless forever. The things we refuse to confront within ourselves don't go away. They grow. They evolve. They wait. And they show up when we're least prepared. You might think you've buried that insecurity from your childhood, but one day it comes roaring back in the form of jealousy or self-sabotage. You might believe you've moved past your fear of failure, but it creeps back in every time you get close to real success. You might assume your anger is under control until you explode on someone you care about over something small. Ignoring your internal mess doesn't make you strong, it makes you vulnerable, not to the outside world, but to yourself. Because you can't run from the parts of you that live within. You can't build a meaningful life while secretly hiding from the work that healing requires. You can achieve a lot, status, money, relationships, but if your inner world is cracked, eventually everything around you will begin to feel unstable. And here's the thing. Most of the time, the world won't even notice when you're cracking. You'll still show up, you'll still smile, you'll still function. But inside, you'll feel the weight. The anxiety that never leaves. The pressure that builds. Isn't right, and still, you'll tell yourself, I'll deal with it later. But later has a price. Later usually means after the damage has already been done. Sometimes the breakdown looks like burnout. Sometimes it looks like pushing people away. Sometimes it's a deep sense of emptiness, even when life looks full. And by the time it happens, by the time you realize how far you've drifted from yourself, the repair feels harder than it had to be. And this is why doing the internal work matters, not just when things are falling apart, but when everything seems fine. It takes courage to look at yourself and say, this needs to change. It takes maturity to ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? It takes strength to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. But it's in those moments, those quiet, honest conversations with yourself, that real growth begins. Fixing yourself isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming honest. It's about taking responsibility for your own healing instead of waiting for someone else to fix you. It's realizing that if you don't change the behavior will eventually change you, and not in ways you'll like. You can't outrun what's inside. Eventually it catches up, not to punish you, but to wake you up. And if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to stop pretending you're okay when you're not, you'll realize something powerful. You have the ability to heal. You have the capacity to grow. And you have the choice to stop breaking from the inside out. Whatever you're avoiding, face it now. Whatever you keep putting off it today. Because what you don't fix in yourself won't just sit there quietly forever. It will become the very thing that breaks you. And you deserve better than that. It's easy to point fingers. It's easy to look at the world and say, this is why I'm stuck, or that's the reason I can't move forward. We blame our circumstances, our upbringing, our job, our parents, the economy, even the weather. And in some cases, yes, life really is unfair. Yes, people do let us down. And yes, some challenges weren't our fault. But there comes a point when continuing to blame everything around us does more harm than good. Growth doesn't happen when you're stuck in blame. Growth begins when you stop blaming the world and start owning your part. The truth is, the longer you keep pointing outward, the longer you delay the transformation that can only begin inward. When you constantly hold the world responsible for your lack of progress, you give away your power. You convince yourself that until it changes, or they change, you're stuck. And that's the trap. Because if your growth depends on the outside world, then you've already lost control over your life. No one gets through life without hardship. No one escapes pain, betrayal, rejection, or failure. Some people go through unimaginable situations and still rise. Others crumble under far less. Why? Not because one is more capable, but because one made a decision to take responsibility for their future even when they didn't cause their past. That's what owning your growth is all about. It's not saying everything is your fault. It's saying, I refuse to let what happened to me define what becomes of me. It's choosing to take your pain, your frustration, even your disappointments, and turn them into fuel instead of excuses. Every time you say, they didn't support me, try asking, did I ask for help or communicate my needs? Every time you think life is unfair, ask yourself, what can I do despite that unfairness to move forward? Every time you want to say, they held me back, reflect on how often you've held yourself back with doubt, procrastination, or fear. It's uncomfortable. Taking ownership always is. It forces you to confront things you'd rather ignore. But that discomfort, that's where growth lives. That's where breakthroughs are born. The moment you take full responsibility, not just for what's happened, but for what happens next, is the moment everything starts to shift. Growth doesn't come from blame. Growth comes from choices. And you make those choices every day. Do you scroll or do you study? Do you dwell or do you act? Do you stay bitter or do you get better? The world isn't going to rearrange itself to make your life easier. That's not how it works. But you can rearrange yourself, your mindset, your habits, your focus, to become someone who grows through what they go through. And no, you don't have to have it all figured out. Owning your growth doesn't mean becoming perfect. It just means becoming honest. Honest about your patterns, your reactions, your part in the story. It means holding yourself accountable for your healing, your progress, and your purpose. Blame might feel good in the short term. It gives us someone or something else to point to. But it never moves us forward. It never creates momentum. Ownership does. Responsibility does. Action does. So stop waiting for someone else to change so you can grow. Stop hoping the world will fix itself so you can feel better. Start with you. Start now. Because the moment you stop blaming the world and start owning your growth is the moment your life begins to change for real and for good. We grow up with stories, fairy tales, movies, even moments from real life that give us the idea that eventually someone will come to our rescue, that someone wiser, stronger, or more capable will swoop in at the perfect time to fix everything. We imagine a mentor will appear and give us all the answers, or the right relationship will heal all the pain, or the perfect job will suddenly make life feel meaningful. But as we get older, we start to learn a hard truth. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to knock on your door and tell you how to fix your life. No one is going to hand you a personalized map with the exact steps to healing, growth, or fulfillment. That's Not because people don't care, it's because your journey is yours. It's personal, it's internal. And while others can support you along the way, they can't do the work for you. There's a kind of quiet panic that sets in when you finally realize this. When the support you were hoping for doesn't arrive. When the advice you receive feels generic. When people around you are too busy managing their own struggles to carry yours. And then it hits you. If things are going to change, it's going to have to start with you. That realization can feel isolating, but it's also the beginning of empowerment. The truth is, you are the hero you've been waiting for. That doesn't mean you don't need help or guidance. It means that even when help comes, you are the one who must take the steps. You are the one who decides whether to stay stuck or move forward. You are the one who chooses whether to keep repeating the same patterns or to finally break them. When you're in a tough place, it's tempting to look for shortcuts, to hope that time will just make things better on its own. But time only changes things if you change within it. Healing isn't passive, growth isn't automatic, and transformation isn't handed out like a reward. It's earned through effort, discipline, and the willingness to face your truth. You may feel alone in the process, but you're not without power. In fact, once you stop waiting to be saved, you begin to access a strength you never knew you had. You learn that you can survive things you thought would destroy you. You discover that you can learn, unlearn, and rebuild. You realize that you are more capable, more resilient, and more in control than you've given yourself credit for. There's deep freedom in accepting responsibility for your life. It means that your past doesn't have to decide your future. It means that your pain doesn't have to define your path. It means that even if no one shows up with answers, you can still find your own way forward. Waiting to be rescued leads to frustration, dependence, and ultimately disappointment. But choosing to rise on your own terms, that leads to power. That leads to real, lasting change. That's where confidence is built. Not from being saved, but from realizing you can save yourself. No, it's not easy. But easy has never been the goal. Becoming someone who is whole, grounded, and self-led is a far more valuable reward. And the moment you stop waiting and start acting is the moment everything shifts. So don't wait for someone else to unlock your potential. Don't keep hoping that someone will come fix your pain. No one is coming to save you. And that's exactly why it's time to rise and save yourself. Change is one of those words that feels overwhelming. When we think of changing our lives, we imagine massive, dramatic shifts, a total transformation overnight. We picture quitting our jobs, moving to a new city, starting a business, or becoming a whole new person by month. But real, lasting change doesn't happen in big leaps. It happens in the small, quiet decisions we make every single day. Small steps lead to deep change. It's easy to overlook the power of small steps because they don't feel impressive in the moment. Reading one page doesn't feel like progress. Going for a 10-minute walk seems pointless. Saying no to one unhealthy meal doesn't feel like a victory. But that's exactly where the transformation begins. Every small step you take in the right direction is casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. We are shaped more by our daily choices than by any one-time decision. A single workout won't make you fit, but a habit of movement will change your health. One conversation won't fix a relationship, but consistent, honest communication will rebuild trust. One journal entry won't heal your mind, but reflection over time can change how you see yourself and your story. The reason people get stuck is because they're chasing a finish line instead of building a foundation. They want change to feel fast, impressive, and undeniable, but deep change rarely feels that way in real time. It feels slow. It feels repetitive. Sometimes it even feels invisible. But something is happening under the surface. something far more meaningful than instant gratification. You're reprogramming how you think. You're building trust with yourself. You're becoming the kind of person who follows through, who doesn't quit, who shows up even when no one is watching. And that's the kind of change that lasts. Big goals are great, but without small, consistent steps, they're just ideas. You don't climb a mountain in one jump. You do it one step at a time. You don't write a book in one sitting. It happens one word at a time. And you don't become your best self in one moment of inspiration. You grow into it, day by day, through the small, often boring choices that no one claps for, but that shape your life more than any single event ever could. The challenge is that small steps require patience. They require faith. Faith that your effort matters even when the results aren't instant. Faith that today's choice is building a better tomorrow, even if you can't see it yet. And that's where most people quit, not because they can't change, but because they don't stick with the process long enough for the change to take root. The good news is that small steps are always within reach. The difference is to sit with the conflict for as long as you need to. And the good news is that small steps are always within reach. The good news is that small steps are always within reach. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to make giant leaps. You just need to show up today and do one thing a little better than you did yesterday. That's it. One better choice, one healthier decision, one honest reflection, one moment of courage. Over time, those steps compound into something powerful. Change doesn't need to be flashy to be real. It just needs to be consistent. Keep taking the steps. Keep trusting the process. Because the most meaningful transformation isn't the one that happens overnight. It's the one that builds quietly, persistently, and deeply until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. That's how real change works. One small step at a time. So many people approach the idea of fixing themselves as if it's a quest for perfection. They imagine that if they just worked hard enough, became disciplined enough, or made enough changes, they would emerge flawless, without doubt, without fear, without pain. But that vision is not only unrealistic, it's also damaging. Fixing yourself isn't about perfection. It's about becoming whole. Perfection implies an endpoint, a flawless state where nothing is missing or broken. Wholeness, on the other hand, embraces the full spectrum of what it means to be human, the light and the shadow, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, the successes and the failures. To become whole is to accept yourself fully, including the parts you've been taught to hide or reject. It's the recognition that your flaws don't make you less worthy, they make you human. Many of us spend so much energy trying to cover up our imperfections, our fears, our mistakes, our insecurities, that we forget the most important work is learning to live with them. The desire to be perfect often leads to self-criticism and shame. We hold ourselves to impossible standards and then beat ourselves up when we inevitably fall short. That cycle can leave us feeling exhausted and disconnected from ourselves. But becoming whole means breaking free from that cycle. It means showing up with honesty and compassion. It means saying, I'm not perfect, but I'm enough. It means allowing yourself to be seen as you truly are, without the need for masks or defenses. Wholeness isn't about hiding the cracks, it's about shining light on them and finding strength in the places you once thought were broken. This doesn't mean ignoring the parts of yourself that need growth or healing. It means approaching those parts with kindness and patience. Fixing yourself is a process of integration, not elimination. You don't have to erase your past or your pain to be whole. You need to bring them into the story you're telling about yourself. When you integrate your experiences, the good and the bad, you create a more authentic and resilient The journey toward wholeness often involves confronting uncomfortable truths. It means facing your fears, your regrets, and your wounds instead of running from them. It means learning to listen to the quiet parts of yourself that have been silenced by doubt or neglect. This kind of self-awareness is hard work, but it's necessary if you want to stop living in fragments and start living as a complete person. When you become whole, you stop chasing unrealistic ideals and start building a foundation of self-acceptance. You become less reactive to external validation because your worth isn't dependent on approval or achievement. You find peace in simply being who you are. And from that place of wholeness, real growth happens, not because you're trying to fix something broken, but because you're choosing to cultivate what's already there. Perfection can never bring peace because it's always out of reach. Wholeness brings peace because it embraces reality, the messy, beautiful, imperfect reality of being human. It invites you to stop fighting yourself and start loving yourself. It calls you to a deeper relationship with your own story, where every chapter, even the difficult ones, matters. Fixing yourself isn't about becoming a flawless version of you. It's about becoming a complete, authentic, and compassionate version of you. It's about reclaiming your power, not by erasing your faults, but by embracing your full humanity. When you stop chasing perfection and start seeking wholeness, you open the door to a life that is richer, freer, and more deeply connected to who you truly are.